This week on Lessons I Learned in Law, I'm delighted to be joined by Tara Haig, who is General Counsel at Multiverse. The Multiverse is a 1.7 billion valued business within the AI and edtech space, headquartered in London. Tara's got a really interesting career. She joined Multiverse in 2021. It was a position that she found through her network and people that she'd worked with during her time in a startup merchant bank. And her career started as a corporate lawyer. She was 2 years qualified when she made the move in-house and took a massive leap of faith into an organisation that was growing significantly, and she set up the office of that business in New York. So we'll hear a lot about how she's thrived in opportunities where she's been pushed outside of her comfort zone and said yes to opportunities that push her into that area of discomfort. She's also spent time working in Kenya and living in Kenya. She's a twin mum, and we talk about the challenges that she's faced in her personal life as a result of having two young kids and how she balances work with that. So loads in there about saying yes to opportunity, the power of a network. So if you're looking to learn more about what it's like to work in that startup and scale-up environment, then this one's for you. Hi Tara, thank you for joining us in northeast London. Is this where we are?
Somewhere out east, far east.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for coming in, and nice to meet you. Welcome to Lessons I Learned in Law.
Thank you very much. Let's hope we've got some.
Fingers crossed. So I've given an introduction to the best of my ability, but it'd be good if you could share a bit about your current role and where you're at today, and then we'll crack on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thanks for having me. I am the General Counsel of a VC-backed business called Multiverse. Cool. We're a kind of Series D business, about 800 or so people. And our value is we're an upskilling platform for AI and tech adoption. Okay. So we work with our clients and partners with a mission to providing equal access to opportunity for all people within the workforce. We believe that kind of access to tech and AI is the way that people will grow. It's the future. And so without ensuring that everybody in the workplace has access to this, we won't be kind of fulfilling that mission.
Cool. And you're General Counsel there. At what stage did you join the business?
I joined just at the kind of far end of Series A. So okay. We were 100 or so people. I've been at Multiverse for about 5 years now. So yeah, it's been quite the journey. Yeah. Seen a lot, grown a lot with the job. So yeah, currently as General Counsel, I'm responsible obviously for legal, privacy, and I think when this kind of goes live, terrifying statement, I also will own kind of governance and compliance. So nice. Kind of spanning cool. The business.
So how that enrich your role in terms of team size and?
Oh yeah, significantly. So yeah, we'll jump from about a team of 9 to 17 or so.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very good.
Every day's a school day.
Yeah, exactly. More lessons. We should have been doing them after you took on those functions. Time is everything.
Exactly.
How did that come around? In terms of taking those functions on?
So I think it's what's the role of the GC, right? It's to kind of ensure that we are providing our services in a compliant way, and we are, although you wouldn't necessarily think of it, we are a regulated business. So we provide apprenticeships. So the way that we deliver our services is primarily through apprenticeships. Okay. And that is a regulated space through kind of Department for Education, Ofsted, etc. So we actually have a myriad of regulators. And so when we talk about compliance, it's complying with our regulatory requirements. So, but it's also got a very kind of strong learning bent to it as well, obviously, because it's about how you teach people, what's the pedagogy. And so, there's quite a lot in there. So there's a lot for me to learn.
Yeah, totally. So how do the apprenticeships work? Just keen to bring it to life for people listening.
Yeah, so apprenticeships are all about on-the-job applied learning. So, if we row back a long time, we think about what is an apprenticeship. You are kind of doing, you are learning through doing. And we believe that is the most kind of relevant way to learn skills, especially like AI adoption. You can't learn that in isolation. very abstract. If you sat in university or you sat on a course that didn't apply that to day what you're learning, then it would almost certainly, the opportunity would have passed you before you got the chance to apply it. So apprenticeships are all about learning on the job. You apply your problems that you are grappling with at work. Our coaches, our platform, our kind of learning will help you to solve that while you're going through the kind of apprenticeship journey.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And from Series A to D, how much change has there been in the business and the product, and have you seen all that through?
I'd say the core mission has remained absolutely constant, which is, as we say, it's about this kind of lifelong learning and learning applied to what you're doing. It's not kind of abstract learning. That has remained core, and this idea that you learn on your job, that there is value to the employer for making sure that their workforce is learning while they're being paid to do their job. That core mission of upskilling the workforce has remained core throughout. I think what's changed is obviously, technological application. Our platform has obviously kind of grown with the business. We now, there's a lot of AI that kind of runs through our platform. We obviously teach new courses. Obviously, the learning that we are providing is probably different to what it was. Well, is different to 5 years ago.
Yeah,
obviously.
such a fast-paced. Those 5 years, just things have.
Flies by. But some things remain
crazy.
true.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those core principles. Nice. Well, thank you for sharing that. We'll jump into a bit more about that later. But we'll jump into lesson 1 if you could share that with us.
Yeah, so God, you forced me to dig deep thinking about this. Something I like to do often. So I think my first lesson was say yes, and I don't mean the classic don't be a blocker, don't say no to everything as a lawyer. There's something in that for sure, and that's a whole other topic. I think what I mean is when I think about my journey and how I found my way moving from private practice into in-house life, it's about saying yes to opportunity. It's about saying yes to things that scare you, things that seem abstract, that you don't know how to do. And I have this kind of core principle that everything is figure-outable.
Right. It's a new word.
Yeah. Do God, I even got influenced the other day. I was mindlessly scrolling through Instagram, and I came across this sad little poster of a hamster, I think it is, holding a little sign saying everything is figure-outable. And I found myself buying it, and it's now sitting next to my desk at home. But
oh, brilliant.
But I kind of do believe it, and I think the reason I say it is it opens up opportunity that you don't know that was there. We were just talking about how do you craft this path as a lawyer. Well, you probably can't really, but if you say yes to opportunities and kind of you grasp them when they come up, even if it sounds really hard and you don't immediately know how to do it. And I think as lawyers, we're trained, to spot risk and say no, actually. And so I think it's about thinking, how do I do that, and breaking down things to core principles from the beginning. And if I think about what those yeses have kind of meant for me.
Yeah, I'm interested.
So I moved in-house quite early on. So I left, I was in the private equity team at McFarland's.
Okay.
And I left, I was barely 2 years qualified, to move in-house to a startup merchant bank. So we were a corporate finance house with an investment arm on the side.
Right.
But the reason I moved there full-time was nothing to do with me or the job. My now husband was moving to New York, and that was just something I'd always wanted to do.
Right,
it's kind of, New York has my heart. And so I left my job at McFarland's. We didn't have overseas offices. I wasn't really cut out to be a private practice lawyer. I knew that.
Right.
Probably knew that.
When did you feel you knew that?
I love being in the business. For me, I mean, look, I loved McFarland's as a place, wonderful law firm, nothing bad to say about it. The job as private practice lawyer, just being an advisor on the outskirts, on the outside, you kind of have a project, you do the project, you put it down, move away, you don't see how that comes to life. Yeah. That doesn't kind of get me excited. Yeah. So it was more that, really kind of what it means to be a lawyer. Or how I could do it. So I left my job at McFarland's, and the partners at the business I was working at, Leap Partners, asked me if I would set up an office in New York for them.
Right.
Terrifying. I was 2 years qualified. I said yes.
Yeah.
Did I know how to do that? Absolutely not.
Cool.
Figure it out. And then, and then just taking that principle, so many things. We were in New York, we were needed to be regulated, but we weren't regulated. We didn't have the right staff in place. So how do we do that? I put my hand up and said, I'll take the FINRA exams. Here we go. I'll do the Series 7. I'll do that. Got the books, started learning so that we had the people.
Yeah.
Thank God we didn't have to execute on that. And in the meantime, we kind of found a partner to work with. But it was, and then you learn more about the business that you're in, and you kind of show a willing to be that person. And then kind of, Tara, can you raise a fund? Can you help us with that? Yes, I can. Can you lead on raising a SPAC? Yes, I can. Can you ended up, being asked to be a director on some of our portfolio companies and say yes. You don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
But I think these yeses kind of grow and grow, and I think they make you a more rounded person.
Yeah.
So that then you can apply that back to your remit as a lawyer. So you're not just a lawyer.
Being a lawyer, yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like, there was... How much lawyering was there involved in
was
that
a great
job? Couldn't have been much by the sounds of it.
Well, quite a lot, actually. Quite a lot. We were also, we were a regulated corporate finance advisory firm. So, yes, we there was a lot of client contracts involved in that. Obviously, we need to make that right. We raised money, so there's a lot. We then deployed a lot of money into our portfolio companies. So a lot, and then there was the investment, the M&A, the exits that came out of that. Right. So it snuck in.
Yeah. Just the other stuff. The other stuff was the scary part.
Side.
How did you how when you're leaning into something like that's new, and how do you leverage other people, and who do you ask if you don't know the answers to things?
Look, I think there's something so important in that, isn't there, about networks? Kind of, there's one thing I learned about that business in particular was the power of networks. When you think about kind of corporate finance advisory, fundraising, that's all about who you know. That's about kind of creating opportunities, creating kind of deals out of nothing half the time, and that's because you've got a kind of pretty big book, right? And I think that goes for probably every profession, and I think in particular for lawyers. We are expected, I think, as GCs to, I don't know if it's to know so much, but to be across so many topics. So it's impossible to know everything, but obviously knowing who to call and knowing when to call somebody else and when to leverage, in-house, a friend, somebody in a different sector, somebody in a different profession. I think that's really important. So maintaining those relationships, I think, is key. And there's so many great groups and networks now. I think the industry is kind of catching up with the power of networks.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's so. I think it's so important to build it as you go, so that you're not looking for a network when you need it, and looking to leverage or just take something when you might need it most.
And give,
totally.
Participate in it. Don't just be a taker. You've got to give back.
Yeah, and I think it's part of the ethos of this this podcast as well, like sharing lessons. And the new function that you're taking on, or the new responsibilities, is that another example of that saying yes?
I think this say yes thing has been so when I thought about like kind of the phases of my career. Sorry, this massive ring I'm wearing is banging into this. Take it off. So I say yes, kind of that was the first move in-house, and so many opportunities came out of that. And then when I left that business, we sold it to another group. And then I didn't have another job lined up when I left. I kind of actually I thought maybe I won't be a lawyer, maybe I'll go and do something else. And then lockdown struck, and so there I was, baking banana bread and doing all the rest with everyone else. And I got a call from one of the co-founders of what was White Hat, now Multiverse. And she asked me if I could help out with something. And I said, well, what do you need help with? And it was all around GDPR and data protection. And my first reaction was, I don't think I'm your gal. Like, this hasn't been a big part of my world. But actually, that saying yes to prior things, I think, led up to that. And she said, no, that's fine. I just want somebody to be a thought partner with me. Go back to basics and walk through how we apply this to our business and kind of what that means. So I said, yes. And then, you know, that kind of helping out with that discrete project became something more, became you know, helping with GTM became here I am 5 years later.
Yeah,
So,
cool.
yeah, that's, and then I think, you know, and then I think about what's the yes now? And I think, you know, what's the new phase? It's not a new job, I hope. I think it's saying yes to AI, you know, kind of it's the, in my opinion, transformational thing that we're all going through. And how do we say yes to this? This is where the opportunities and the excitement comes now.
Yeah.
So I think it's just like, where do these yeses go?
Yeah. Do you feel you seek out those things that are
so.
discomfort and things
I think
that are...
so. Must have a dark side to me. Yeah. How
Yeah.
can I make myself uncomfortable? Well, like I said to you, even doing this is a hugely uncomfortable.
Right. Sorry.
No. I say, like, I'm not naturally inclined to do these things, but I'm pushing myself. So I think that's the point. Yeah, I do like to find those things that are challenging. I think if you're not challenging yourself, I don't feel particularly rewarded. Like I feel like I need to earn something
come
every
out the end
day
of it and
almost.
think that was hard.
Yeah.
No, I'm similar. I think I struggle to keep still and not look for new.
Yeah.
Like if I'm doing the same thing over and over, I find I get a little bit itchy feet. Yeah, but nice. And we're talking mum of twins.
I am, yeah. I have 2 beautiful little boys, Wolf and Rory. They're 3. Keep me busy.
And how's that changed your professional
Do you know?
balance?
Gosh, it's a bit of a trope, isn't it? But I think perspective, isn't it? It changes your boundaries, changes your, you know. It actually, having just said, well, you know, say yes, I think it creates the opportunity to say no to some things. You know, you now have, you know, I do need to go home. I am going home for bath time. That is a new thing in my life, and nothing is more important to me than doing that. So I think it does create a perspective on everything that you're doing. You know, even if something's hard, you've still got this other thing in your life that is just, you know, maybe I hope it's everybody in a business like Multiverse, but I think as lawyers, we take on so much internally, you know, that kind of everything's so big and everything's so important. Yeah. And then, you know, you've got these 2 little creatures that just need you.
That rely on you, yeah. I know, and rely on you to have a steady head.
Oh,
and
gosh.
When it's so hard, with when they test the boundaries. No, I'm the same. I find that the hardest, to stay like calm and not lose my shit when everything's going crazy.
That's hard though, isn't it?
It is. I think it's the hardest. It was the hardest thing I find.
I'm not sure how I feel about gentle parenting.
Yeah, I know.
I'm sure I've mastered that one yet. I think if we talk about seeking out the hard things, that one.
There's so much, like, I speak to my parents about it, and like they're like, well, there's the same as probably being a lawyer, but the same as anything, I suppose. There's so much information like that you've got now as a parent. I don't know if it's great. Like my mum said, I don't know if it's
too much.
I like it or not, because it's like it's too much. Whereas we just did it, just got on with it.
God, I'm showing how much time I spend on Instagram. I saw another thing the other day that was like, make 1980s parenting great again.
Oh, really?
It's made me laugh. It's made me chuckle.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to it. Gladiators. The Gladiators is viewed in our house on a Saturday, so I'm like,
I hear it's
that's
back.
my little bit of the 90s. Yeah, the 90s,
back.
80s. Kids love it. Cool. So into Multiverse at that point. How did that relationship come around then with the white hat? Was it the founder? How did you know that person?
So I knew Sophie because she'd worked for one of our investors in Leap, the business I was at before. So we'd worked together on a few fun and thorny issues, and you know, she'd obviously just seen the way I approach things. We'd worked quite a lot together, as in a totally different environment for both of us. So again, the power of network, the power of relationships.
Crazy. Yeah. The best opportunities and roles are in someone else's, or in your network. They're in someone else's. They don't exist perhaps, and they don't evolve.
Exactly that.
They're not advertised roles.
Yeah, this one certainly wasn't.
No.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So we'll jump on to lesson 2.
2. Show me the money.
Okay.
No, this isn't me. This isn't me kind of advocating for more pay. That's not that. What I mean here is really understand your business, the business that you're in. Understand the commercial drivers. How does it make money? How does it lose money? How do you grow it? How do you grow that pie? And I think if you do not understand that, if you're not truly interested in that, you can't make those risk-based decisions that you just need to make as a lawyer every day. And that changes over time, which is why you really need to understand those elements and, kind of go deeper. Do you really understand what burn is, what run rate, what your kind of CAC is? What does all of that mean? So that you can be truly kind of involved in those decisions. You're not just making kind of, I think I've used this word a lot now, this is kind of abstract legal comments about risk. But they may or may not be. Or it may be a risk you absolutely need to take to grow something. It's just, I think if you don't truly understand that, and then I'd say, and not everything we do in law involves another party or the other side, but to the extent you're in a negotiation, understand where their money comes from.
Right.
Like what's important to that other side, because then, why are they so irritated about one particular clause? Well, they might be selling a widget or selling a service, but what's the core to that? Is it their data? Is it their IP? What's driving their numbers?
Value, yeah.
And so that means that then you can have that conversation from what are we really talking about? Like what's the table stakes here? Which helps you get to solutions kind of faster.
Yeah. How did I'd imagine you got a lot of exposure to that at Leap in that rollout of practice. Do you feel that shaped that approach to looking at the numbers?
I think I've always been. I mean, who knows? Chicken and egg, isn't it? Sometimes, but
Right.
I think I've always been curious about that. I've come from a very entrepreneurial family.
Okay.
Kind of first professional within my kind of family. So I think I've always had that probably somewhere like running through my veins. I like the kind of the commercial conversations. So I think I've always had it. But yes, certainly working at Leap and sitting, on our investment committee, thinking about, other people's startups. What's the, did we always get that right? No. But, you learn to have those conversations and what the drivers are that, kind of what drives growth, what drives adoption.
Right.
So I almost certainly learned, I learned huge amounts in that business. And you've got to take it with you.
Yeah, totally. And how do you encourage like your team, the lawyers? 'Cause I think you're maybe slightly removed from the CFO or the FD, or how do you ensure that they're getting that?
It's a great point. Because look, I mean, it's the chagrin of every lawyer, isn't it? You won't always be in every room yourself as well, even as the GC. So, kind of got to accept that. So how do you trickle down this into your team? I think first off, go back to your hiring and hire people who actually who you can see have that drive and that interest anyway. I'd love to think all lawyers going in-house have that kind of, I don't know, commercial spark or drive. I don't know if that's true or not.
I don't think it is always true. No.
So I think kind of, first of all, hire what you want in that kind of respect. So make sure that you're building the team that you can work with on that. And then I think it's just being as open and transparent with them. And I try to do that with my team kind of daily, like, how have we come about this decision? Like, what was the thinking in the room? What is that? What's the challenge that was discussed? And try to bring the commercials into, kind of almost every conversation, and I really try to challenge them on that. What was it we were talking about yesterday? It would have been something about privacy, almost certainly. And I was saying that we were going down the rabbit hole of, kind of, come back to how I found my way into Multiverse, but, controller, processor, what we were talking about, what right we had with somebody's data. And I said, that's all true and correct. But when you're talking to the client, talk to them about the value that, why do we need that? Not we're the controller so we can do X. That's not a compelling. It's true.
Yeah.
Up to a point, but it's not. But bring them on the journey. What's the story here? How are you bringing our business into our negotiations to kind of, what's the value?
Yeah.
It's always what's the value. And I think I really try to push the team to think about that in every scenario, as dry as it might be.
Yeah, I think that the soft communication, or I think a lot of the time lawyers maybe don't feel they have permission to know that detail or to know that to sometimes know that information.
It frustrates me, that sentence. Because why? We're in-house. We're not an advisor on this side. We all move in-house to be part of that journey to what are we all doing within a business? We're trying to look, we have a mission, but ultimately we're a commercial business. You know, we're kind of trying to create revenue and bring revenue into the business to drive that mission. But we're part of that. So why do we not have permission like anybody else would?
Yeah. I think they do. I think you do. I think it's asking the right. I think the curious mindset and being interested will naturally soften people to give permission or to share more information. I don't know if it's anything in training. Like when I was a lawyer, I didn't feel. I feel you are as a deal lawyer, junior lawyer in M&A or investment. You're doing the legal docs,
correct,
and you are quite shielded from. You've got the cap table and the information on that, but actually, what's gone into that, you don't really have much exposure to it.
No, you're right. You've got to flip that switch internally, and so I think it's incumbent on us as leaders to empower everybody to feel empowered and to feel inclined to kind of bring that story into what we're doing.
Yeah, nice. And do you have formal training around those types of initiatives internally, or getting legal involved?
Formal training around,
or like the storytelling, like how to tell the value.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the value, of Multiverse. We have clients and customers join, all hands and kind of share that. So I think it's available to everybody. And then, as I say, I think it's incumbent on leaders to make sure from kind of ground up that everybody feels that they've got the facts and they feel comfortable. Give them the confidence. Kind of forgiveness, not permission sometimes.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I'm sure that's oft used in startup or series A, B, C, D land. Yeah. Cool. And that, like, going through those, what are the big learnings from Series A and then the big differences from Series A to Series D in a business like that?
What are the big learnings?
I mean, we're covering them as lessons learned.
Yeah, no, what are the big... I mean, it's such a riotous journey. It's, I describe most days as kind of having professional whiplash. Okay. You've got to turn your attention to so many different things. I think the learnings for us is kind of, on the legal side, is just trying to, like, hold so many thoughts at once. Yeah. How do you do that? And then how do you... Is this a learning? I don't know. But how do you make sure that you are across the business to kind of join those dots for people? Because actually we have quite a privileged position as the legal team. You see, you've got, well, you should have, kind of full overview, a picture across every team that actually most people don't have, possibly CFO, probably CFO, but like most other leaders don't have the kind of full view into every team. So I think the kind of holding that and staying on top of each of your different kind of business units and how you can help people to join those dots and kind of make, what is the right risk in the right moment? What is acceptable? Yeah. And that changes. Yeah. It changes over time. Yeah. And I think that's the thing, it changes. What got us here doesn't get us there. Yeah, right, I bet. Yeah, it's... different. I can imagine there's different risk factors, and from A to D, and the investors. Yeah, I mean we've got a great group of investors. I mean they push us. They want more. Yeah. They want bigger. Great. So do we. Yeah. That's what you're on. Cool. And so we'll move on to lesson 3. Lesson 3. It's quite simple. I just said, do you? Like, be authentic. Turn up as a person. Don't turn up as a stereotype of a lawyer. And everybody wants you to be the stereotype of a lawyer. I think everybody else in the business has a view of what a lawyer legal looks like. You don't have to do that. In fact, I would encourage people not to do that.
Okay.
Be yourself, and I think that's where trust comes from. If you can be yourself, then people they know who you are, they know where you're kind of, you know where you're coming from, and I think if you don't have trust, then you can't build influence. So I think that's all part of that story, not just knowing the technicalities, not just understanding risk, not just understanding the business, but, bringing yourself to the table, your nuances, your instincts, and I think that makes you a rounded leader, and I think that then opens the door for the rest of your team to turn it. It's exhausting not being yourself, isn't it?
Completely, yeah.
We've got enough to exhaust us. Like, don't kind of, don't add another kind of add another trap in there.
Yeah, so, where you have to have the face on. No, I completely.
It just makes life
completely
more fun,
agree.
doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And people generally, like you say, it adds the trust and credibility. And if you show up in that way. Do you feel like when you were in? Did you feel like that in day one as a trainee? Did you feel comfortable in those surrounds?
Gosh, probably not. It was probably a little bit of, there's a bit of fake it till you make it, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. But there is a perception, or there is the mould of a lawyer and what a typical corporate lawyer looks like and should look like and sound like. And
I suppose so, but you're doing something different in private practice, aren't you? You are. There is an element of representing your client, and I suppose this, to some degree, you've got to mirror what they want. This. Show my age, but when I was a trainee, it was, you walk into a partner's office, you put your jacket on and you walk in, those days are long gone, I think, kind of.
Hope so.
Yeah. So, but that was the kind of the environment, not because anybody was straight, it was just kind of a respectful thing. It was, clients, you wore the skirt, you wore the heels, you wore the tie if you're the guy, you wear your jacket. Like that's, I know we're talking about literally physical looks, but like that's part of the environment, right? Like you are a lawyer.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't think that's true anymore in private practice, but I think probably part of why I probably didn't see myself as set for private practice is you're not really being yourself in that world. That's why I loved the minute I got to be in-house.
The environment. Yeah, I found it quite difficult, I think. Again, in hindsight, I found putting the tie on and just being, I don't know, just trying to be someone that I didn't feel.
Don't get me wrong, I love dressing up,
in.
but like
likewise. in the right context, or feeling like it was putting on you were putting on your armor.
Yeah. But I think that's important too, in a way.
I do. Yeah, I think some people maybe do thrive in that, like you said, and being and stepping into it. I probably hadn't put enough thought into, is this exactly what I want? Do I want to be what it means to have the armor on? And that's maybe the bigger issue.
But I think I've been lucky that everywhere I've been, and businesses are made of people, and so kind of I have worked in environments where being yourself is completely respected. At Multiverse, it's we're made up of humans and with all of our foibles, but everybody is, there is no judgment around people being themselves. I don't know if that's true everywhere, to be quite honest. So I can only speak from what I've seen. But I've been lucky with that.
So it sounds like from the whole, it sounds like networking and keeping in touch and surrounding yourself with those people has been important. How do you maintain that? Do you have are you strategic about it? Are you deliberate about how you maintain relationships?
Do you know, I've become a little more strategic. So I only moved back to London a year ago. Before that, I spent 3 years in Kenya. Again, my husband's job. So I was doing the job remotely from Kenya, and I had my kids there and all of that. So I was very much out of the mix, out of networks. So yes, and just honestly, holding any network, even with your own family and friends, is hard when you're abroad and doing something completely different. So I probably had a 3-year kind of gap in my kind of quote unquote networking. So actually, when I came back to London, I was quite deliberate about joining the groups, going to the dinners, turning up at the right conferences. The power of, as we've said, the power of network, I think, is really important. So I did actually quite actively think about how can I put myself back in the mix, because I need to, not only is that a comfort blanket, you have people to turn to, you have those people to reach out to when you're not quite sure which way to turn, or you need breadth of kind of experience to pull on. It's... I've lost my train of thought now, but it's incredibly important that you have that.
Yeah. So what was Kenya? What was that like, living there for a few years?
It's such an amazing country.
So in Nairobi, or?
Yeah, we were based in Nairobi. We travelled a lot. I mean, I joke that my twins, on my mat leave, they probably had 7 once-in-a-lifetime safaris.
Wow.
Goodness me, spoiled brats. But but it's an amazing country. And it's really interesting. It's so full of dynamism. It's got this kind of emerging middle class kind of, emerging within Kenya, and they've got this amazing tech scene as well. I tried to make myself not just work from home, to go to some of their co-working spaces, not because it had anything to do with Multiverse whatsoever, but just to kind of get that buzz of what are people doing.
Yeah.
You learn, you hear.
Completely.
You
see
you're
what other people
engaged
are
in
doing.
something. Yeah, it's an amazing country.
Yeah.
I encourage anybody who can travel there to do so.
Yeah, and I'd like to go. I've not been, but I've had friends that live there as well and say similar. And I think that's so important in the, like you say, surrounding yourself with other people that are doing different things and listening to, like, the business may be completely different.
But do you know what? The challenges you kind of learn that some challenges are probably universal, which is kind of interesting in itself. But also, I love hearing about what people are up to. Kind of new ideas. How are they sparking? How are they growing those things?
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm asking everyone for a book recommendation or a podcast recommendation. Other than Lessons I Learned in Law.
This one.
Yeah.
A podcast. Oh God, I don't think I've got anything particularly enlightening here. We tend to listen to, like, The Rest is Politics.
Yeah.
I was a politics student way back when.
Okay.
So that's a bit of a go-to.
US or UK or both?
Yeah, both, but I do enjoy the UK one.
Yeah.
Obviously. So much going on.
Oh,
so that's a kind of go-to. The other podcast that I've listened to a long time is one hosted by Scott Galloway and Cara Swisher called Pivot, which I'm sure you've come across, kind of talking about. I suppose it started off talking about, like, big tech issues in the US, but obviously they stray into so many, like, social, economic kind of tech issues. Which is fascinating.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Very good. And a book?
I read a
go-to book?
I don't know about go-to, but I read a book called Invisible Women recently. I'm not going to pretend to pronounce the author's name. But it was, put my feminist hat on for a moment. It's just fascinating to read about how many, like, social structures, economic structures are set up that just at their core, not actively, but just shut out women from participating within society, within the economy in any kind of meaningful way because of the way structures emerge.
Yeah.
That's
it
was a good read.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good.
If that's your bent.
Yeah, definitely. No, it sounds good. Perfect. We'll put links in the show notes to that. But yeah, that's been great. Thank you for sharing your lessons with us. I look forward to seeing the next stage of growth at Multiverse and hearing all about it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
So that wraps up another episode of Lessons I Learned in Law, powered by Harriet Brown in-house legal recruitment. Now, I share these stories each week to help lawyers of all levels, and both in private practice or working in-house. And it doesn't matter if you're early in your career or you're already leading a team. Learning from your peers or from those who have walked in your shoes before, then this is the show for you. If you find it useful, I would love it if you could share it with your colleagues or share it with your network, or drop us a message just to let us know that you're listening and that you're out there Feedback really helps us grow the show and take it in the direction that gives the most value to you, our listeners. So until next time, I've been Scott Brown. Thank you.